Is Sean Diddy Combs really a criminal mastermind orchestrating a secret web of exploitation? Or is this trial an explosive example of prosecutors pushing the limits to make headlines? After weeks of emotional testimony and shocking claims, the jury has reached a breaking point. 4 serious charges have been decided, but they're completely deadlocked on the most devastating accusation, racketeering. And with the threat of decades behind bars hanging over him, Diddy now faces a moment that could define his legacy forever. After days of tense deliberations, the jury finally reached unanimous decisions on 4 of the 5 charges, and each one carries serious weight. They agreed that Diddy committed sex trafficking involving 2 women known in court documents as Cassie and Jane. These charges center on allegations that he used manipulation, intimidation, and threats to control their actions across state lines. In addition to the sex trafficking counts, the jury also ruled on violations of the Mann Act, a federal law that prohibits transporting individuals for illicit purposes. According to testimony, Diddy arranged for Cassie and Jane to travel between cities under circumstances that prosecutors described as coercive and exploitative. These verdicts alone could expose him to severe legal consequences, even if the racketeering charge ultimately falls apart. But despite the gravity of these 4 counts, the jury remained split on whether all of it adds up to organized criminal conduct. While the other charges were serious on their own, racketeering was always the most complex and controversial part of the case. Under federal law, prosecutors have to prove not just isolated crimes, but an ongoing criminal enterprise. A coordinated effort that looks more like organized crime than individual wrongdoing. From the beginning, this count raised questions even among legal experts. Some argued it was a classic example of trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Diddy, after all, isn't the head of a traditional mob family. He's a music mogul with enormous influence, but convincing 12 people that his actions rose to the level of racketeering was a much higher bar. Inside the jury room, that confusion turned into a deadlock. Several jurors reportedly struggled to see how transporting 2 women and making threats, however serious, amounted to the same kind of enterprise typically associated with figures like Tony Soprano. Others felt the pattern of alleged exploitation was exactly what the racketeering statute was designed to stop. This division left the panel stuck in a tense stalemate, with no clear path forward. Just when deliberations seemed hopelessly stalled, the jury asked to review a crucial piece of testimony. It was a transcript describing one of the most disturbing claims in the entire trial, a moment when Cassie said Diddy threatened her mid-flight. According to her account, he showed her an explicit video she'd once participated in, and warned that if she refused to take part in what he called another freak-off, he would leak the footage to her mother. But there was a complication that could sway how jurors saw her credibility. Cassie never mentioned this threat when she first took the stand. She didn't bring it up during cross-examination either. It only surfaced when prosecutors followed up on redirect. To some jurors, that delay raised doubts. Why wouldn't she have shared something so serious right away? Still, others saw it as a moment of raw fear finally surfacing under pressure. The fact that the jury specifically requested to reread this part suggested that at least some of them were trying to convince holdouts that the threats were real, and that they proved a pattern of coercion behind closed doors. Inside the jury room, the atmosphere reportedly turned intense as the hours dragged on. Unlike some trials where a single holdout stalls the process, this panel was fractured on both sides. Several jurors believed the racketeering charge simply didn't fit. Others felt the evidence was overwhelming. Prosecutors pushed hard for what's known as an Allen charge, a pointed instruction from the judge urging jurors to reconsider their positions and try to reach a consensus. It's sometimes called the nuclear option in courtrooms because it applies heavy pressure on those refusing to budge. Defense attorneys immediately fought back, arguing that any extra instruction could unfairly sway opinions and force a verdict that wasn't genuine. From their perspective, keeping the jury locked in disagreement was the best chance to dismantle the most damaging count. After heated arguments on both sides, the judge decided not to escalate, at least for now. Instead, jurors were told to continue deliberating without any special push. But everyone knew that as each hour passed, the likelihood of a hung jury on racketeering only grew stronger. For Diddy's legal team, a deadlock on the racketeering count isn't just a minor setback for prosecutors. It could be a game changer. If the jury fails to reach a unanimous decision, the government loses its most powerful tool to argue that Diddy was orchestrating an organized criminal scheme. Racketeering charges carry the possibility of decades in prison and a reputation that can overshadow any career accomplishments. Without that conviction, the narrative shifts dramatically. Instead of being branded a criminal mastermind, Diddy could be portrayed as someone accused of isolated acts, serious on their own, but not part of a broader criminal enterprise. That's exactly why defense attorneys have been determined to avoid any additional instructions from the judge that might pressure the jury to break the stalemate. If even a few holdout jurors remain unconvinced, the entire racketeering charge could collapse. For prosecutors, it's a risky scenario. They've invested months building a case that depends on proving an organized pattern. And while the 4 other counts are significant, they don't carry the same sweeping implications. In many ways, this trial has always been about more than individual crimes. It's about whether Diddy's empire was actually a hidden criminal organization. As if the stakes weren't high enough, the timing of deliberations added another layer of tension. The jury was staring down the start of a long holiday weekend, a 4-day break that everyone knew could influence their decision. Prosecutors quietly hoped that the pressure of a looming vacation would motivate jurors to reach a consensus, even if it meant compromising. They even asked the judge to remind the panel that if they couldn't agree, they'd be expected to return on July 3rd, right in the middle of the holiday. But the defense quickly objected. They argued that telling jurors about the possibility of losing their time off could unfairly sway those who were already leaning toward holding out. In the end, the judge sided with the defense and decided not to mention the holiday at all, leaving the panel to deliberate without any extra incentive. Still, everyone in that courtroom knew an unspoken truth. Nothing brings a jury together faster than the promise of going home. With the deadline approaching and the hours ticking away, the question wasn't just about guilt or innocence anymore. It was about whether exhaustion and impatience would tip the balance. Inside the courtroom, reports say Diddy's usually confident demeanor cracked as the partial verdicts were announced. Witnesses described him as visibly upset, aware that the jury's split decision carried heavy consequences. While 4 charges were decided against him, the jury's deadlock on racketeering leaves his fate hanging in the balance, and that uncertainty is a heavy burden. For someone with a public image built on power and control, the possibility of a decades-long sentence is a stark contrast. This moment isn't just about legal strategy, it's about how the world will remember him. The verdict, when it finally comes, could redefine Diddy's legacy, either as a music mogul fighting off allegations or as a figure forever linked to criminal enterprise. The jury will return to court, continuing their deliberations with the clock ticking down before the holiday break. Whether they can break the deadlock on the racketeering charge remains the biggest question. If they reach a unanimous verdict, it could bring a dramatic conclusion to a case that has captured national attention. But if the stalemate holds, it may result in a hung jury for that count, leading to possible retrials or plea deals down the road. For now, everyone is watching closely. This trial isn't just about one man, it's about the limits of power, influence, and the law. Will the jury come together and deliver a final verdict? Or will Diddy walk away from the racketeering charge with his empire still intact? Only time will tell. Only time will.